This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We count on Informed Sources to continue the discussion on important local issues.
It's where our top journalists discuss stories they've covered.
Stay informed with Informed Sources.
Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, Governor Jeff Landry is not known for his shyness, but for his brashness. We saw examples of that on three fronts this week. One was threatening to take over New Orleans finances. Another was redoing the state's congressional district map. And most surprisingly, causing the LSU athletic director to resign. One issue that he did not get involved in was determining a new starting quarterback for the Saints. That has so far been left for the coach. Those issues, plus the New Orleans police chief's plea to maintain overtime pay for officers, are on the agenda for our Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Doug Mouton, sports director, WWL Louisiana, Channel 4. Will Sutton, columnist, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, and Mike Perlstein, freelance investigative reporter. All righty, E, let's start the conversation with you because New Orleans is facing a serious fiscal crisis.
Yeah, you know, of course, I mean, if the LSU athletic department thinks that it has problems paying off severance for coaches and the athletic director, they just see what the city's facing right now, okay?
Yeah,
that have a $160 million debt. This was revealed that the various reasons, bad revenue projections, and not a good plan for overtime, and just one thing after the other that they had. Some federal money that's due that just hasn't come in yet, and so at least that's out there. But the council was trying to reach. They need money, okay? For example, the payroll is $22 million every 2 weeks. That's for 5,000 employees. That's covered right now until November 12th, but they got to get something rolling out of that. So one plan that they came up with last year or last week was to try to get permission to develop a short-term revenue loan bond. And $125 million, and this could help pay it. This is not like another bond where you're buying something. This is just a loan to help pay off expenses. Well, Governor Landry didn't like that, and his administration didn't. And ultimately, the state controls that sort of thing. And it was clear that he wasn't going to allow the bond commission, which he points the members to approve it. He was opposed to it, and so it was clear it wasn't going anywhere. But the real kicker, though, was that even if it would have been approved, it would have been with the condition that the state approved an administrator. So there'd be one person kind of deciding how the city spends all his money. It's money, so you can imagine the council didn't like that. One of the council members is Helena Moreno, who's about to be mayor, and you know she didn't want to be hearing that. I think she says this. I think a quote was something like, "This makes me sick to my stomach," and so that wasn't going on anywhere. And so the council pulled out of that idea, and so they're still looking for something that's out there. Is that there is something called the Rainy Day Fund. That was a fund that was established in 2017 to deal with specific emergencies, so-called acts of God or weather tragedies or something not anticipated. $37 million, which of course won't cover it all, but at least it's a first step. To use it, you need to get 2/3 of the council to approve it. The Picayune talked to the council members, and of the 7 council members, 5 have indicated that they would approve it. The 2 who didn't indicate one way or the other is one, Helena Moreno, who again is seeing government for a different perspective now as mayor-elect and Freddie King. They haven't heard from them. But at least they seem to have the votes there if it would happen. But nobody's really crazy about doing that kind of thing. It's all, yeah, well, we do it if we have to, but we wish we could find something else. Mayor Cantrell came up with a whole series of proposals of the usual things, raising fees for parking tickets and speeding tickets and that sort of thing. And so that's still out there. And again, no council member wants to be, it's essentially raising taxes is what it is. And so no council member wants to be doing that either. And so there's a solution that's still being looked for right now. And I guess the most immediate thing is the rainy day fund. Seems to me something will happen, but there's still the issue's still out there.
It seems like they're looking at every nook and cranny to try to find a penny here and there, not paying some debts or whatever, or some monies that were owed. Cuts, they're talking about that. And of course, one of the big reasons that has been cited for this deficit is overtime paying.
Yeah.
That they were just not adequately prepared to cover the overtime and extra overtime because of the terrorist attack, because of the snowstorm. Then, of course, we had Super Bowl and, of course, Mardi Gras. So overtime is a big issue. And now we'll go over to Mike and talk about that, because overtime is also very important to the New Orleans Police Department. And the superintendent had something to say about that.
Well, bottom line is the New Orleans Police Department has been running on overtime for many years, and especially with the depleted department, really depleted since COVID. A force that was once 1,200, considered the bare minimum, is down to under 900. So they've used the overtime to fill some of those gaps, and the result of all that is that that's been an $18 to $22 million chunk of the budget so far this year. With 2 months to go, it's up over $23 million so far. So that's just built in, and you can't budget for overtime the way you can regular salaries, because you just don't know what emergencies are going to pop up. Who could have predicted the terrorist attack, right? Certain things like Mardi Gras, Super Bowl, you can get a little better handle on that, but you just have that overtime as part of the overall budget. And now it's clearly blown way past what was anticipated, and now some very difficult choices are going to have to be made. The bottom line is there's anxiety now, and it's widespread across city departments, but the pain is going to come. You can't just make $160 million materialize out of thin air, and this is a government that by statute has to have a balanced budget. You can't spend money that you don't have.
But from hearing her comments yesterday, it sounded like she said, I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, here's the wiggle room.
I'm paraphrasing it. But
that's right. And here's the wiggle room that she does have. So she's given, a certain budget, and it does not always have specified, except for the major events that are going to happen, like Super Bowl, Mardi Gras. It is within her discretion to maybe cut some other things first. But she basically said, and this wasn't, you said plea, but it wasn't really a plea. Mm-hmm. She is saying basically, I will die on this hill, and if I'm not the right police chief for that, then I will not be your police chief. Those are pretty strong words.
Yep.
Pretty much a threat.
Because of all the city departments, public safety, it has to rank at, if not at the very top of city priorities. Calls for service, solving crimes, being able to respond to basic 911 emergencies. And we did see this movie before. It was when Landry was first elected mayor, and he selected Ronald Surpass to be the police chief. And he inherited a fiscal crisis, and his plan was to freeze hiring of all city departments. Mm-hmm. And I did the story. I uncovered all of the emails that Surpass was first writing with a mild warning, and then 5-alarm fire. You can't freeze hiring for police. You will dig a hole that you can't dig out of. Well, here we are, 2025, and we haven't dug out of that hole yet. Still down all those officers, super reliant on overtime. The wiggle room that Kirkpatrick does have is, are there non-essential employees? There's a lot of civilian employees who take up some slack. Mm-hmm. Those are some who might be on the chopping block for furloughs, certainly, overtime. But just look at a homicide detective, hot on the trail to solve a case, and, the clock strikes the end of the shift. You can't just say, okay, well, go home now. Right. These guys are built on working overtime to enhance public safety.
And she even mentioned how dangerous it is for the working policemen not to have overtime people to back them up, to be there.
Absolutely. And look, a lot of this, talking to individual officers, the department is so thin on troops that one absence for illness or, say, military leave in a district can bring you down to like almost a skeleton crew where somebody gets called. Can you fill the shift with overtime?
So the overtime is really
that's
needed.
every day. That's every day in this police department.
So overtime is really needed to just staff.
Every day.
Just staff the department.
Every day.
To keep the city protected. And as Errol pointed out, to also make sure the officers are protected too.
And that's
they stay safe.
Yeah, and she mentioned that front and foremost, which is officer safety. You know, we saw what happens when officers without backup, one-man cars, it puts officers at risk. And here's I guess the long-term ramification is a city with shaky finances, with officers, you know, not having that kind of backup, it just makes it harder to recruit new officers in a department that's already depleted.
Okay, all right, thanks, Mike. Over to you, Doug, and more turmoil. And this is, you know, talking about LSU. What on earth is going on there?
I think the most appropriate word would be bizarre. It's just a bizarre situation. The governor is involved. It is chaos, or at least appears to be chaos at LSU. For anybody who's not a huge, hardcore college football fan, let me take you from the beginning. LSU in 2021, Scott Woodward, the athletic director, hires Brian Kelly, right? It's a 10-year, $95 million contract. That's a big contract, big deal. Brian Kelly is the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. LSU plays at the highest level of college football. It was big. It wasn't really inappropriately big given other contracts at the time for college football coaches. And his salary now is not crazy high. You would not say that. But it's 10 years. So this is year 4 coming into this year. He has yet to get LSU to the college football playoff, which is the goal. And this year, LSU spent $18 million in the transfer portal, and they've got a Heisman Trophy favorite quarterback, right? So this is the year for Brian Kelly to deliver, and he hasn't. 2 things happened this year that made Brian Kelly's going out inevitable, I think. One was the loss to Vanderbilt. Losing to Vanderbilt is one thing. They're the bottom dwellers of the SEC forever. They've ever been their best season ever, maybe. But they got pushed around by Vanderbilt. And LSU is getting called soft nationally, which is not going to fly. And then the other thing is Penn State fired its football coach, James Franklin, who also had a roughly $50 million buyout. And for Penn State, they said, we're going to pay the buyout. And at LSU, just because it's LSU playing at the highest level of college football, they can't say, or I knew they wouldn't say, well, you know what, we can't afford to do, we're not Penn State. That's just not an option at LSU. So once Penn State did it, I knew LSU was going to have to do it. All we were waiting for was the third loss. The third loss is what eliminates you from the college football playoff. That happened Saturday night against Texas A&M. Sunday morning, the first thing I did was when I woke up was start texting people in the know, is Brian Kelly getting fired today? Because to me, it's inevitable at that point. And at first it was, oh, no, just the offensive coordinator. Then an hour later, oh, there's talks now. And then an hour later, oh, maybe. And by the end of the day, Brian Kelly was fired. Then the governor gets in and says the athletic director, Scott Woodward, who gave Brian Kelly that contract with the $54 million buyout now because of what's left on that contract, he says Scott Woodward is not going to hire the next football coach. So you've just taken away the real power from your athletic director. So sure enough, the next day, Scott Woodward mutually agrees to leave LSU. By the way, he has a $6.7 million buyout. So LSU's paying $60 million roughly in buyouts. They do have an interim athletic director.
A rainy day fund like the city.
Yes. Well, LSU football has sort of a perpetual rainy day fund. They have boosters with money, and boosters are, it hadn't happened yet, going to pay the Brian Kelly. Taxpayers are not going to actually have to pay this. The LSU is going to pay for this themselves through the athletic department.
Because the governor's had real issue with the amount of money that's
And look, that was what the governor said. That was how he jumped in, saying, yes, this is a contract with the state of Louisiana. If LSU football would not be able to pay this, the state of Louisiana would have to. That was not ever going to happen and has not ever happened. So, yes, in theory, it could have happened, but it never was. So Verge Osbury has now taken over as the athletic director. He's a guy that's been in that athletic department for more than 30 years and a ton of jobs. He literally, maybe not literally, but he bleeds purple and gold. Probably not literally, but he does. You know what I mean? And look, I like Verge. He's very well respected. And he said on Friday that the governor had talked about incentive blatant contracts. I don't know how you get a big-time college coach with a contract that's not at market value. Verge said on Friday, I've talked to the Board of Supervisors. They told me, don't worry about all that. Just go hire the best coach I can find. So Verge is in charge of finding the best coach I can find. It's chaos. I don't know what this looks like or how it's going to play out, but it's super interesting.
So, quick question. Was it the loss to A&M or was it the size of the loss?
It was both. But even a better loss would have been his third loss, and the college football playoffs were out. And you got to look. They have no quarterback lined up for next year. You spent $18 million on the transfer portal this year, and you've delivered at least 3 losses and counting. And you're not going to the college football playoff. Yes, the size of the loss made it more imminent, but it was going to happen either way.
And some people were making hay out of the fans. Fire Kelly, fire Kelly. I don't think that was anything that put it over the edge.
No. Look, the third loss put it over the edge. But the fact that, look, it's the one thing about college football that's different than the Saints, right? College football, fans are loyal to the institution, not to the coach. And it's because there's so much player turnover, that's just naturally built into the system. You can only play 4 years. That fans are loyal to the institution. And if he's not good for the institution, they will turn on a coach really fast in all college sports.
He never really had the fan base.
And he never had.
Okay.
He never wanted it.
We have to move on from LSU, but the governor is saying that he's not going to choose.
He says he's not going to choose, but he's clearly involved in the process. And if I'm Lane Kiffin, I don't want a piece of that chaos. We'll see how this plays out.
All righty. Thank you, Doug. Okay, well, over to you. Now, of course, there was some other activity in Baton Rouge, and that was a special session of the legislature, and they pushed back our springtime elections.
Yeah, another type of bizarreness. So the governor called a special legislative session, and legislators went to Baton Rouge and did what he needed them to do. First of all, we created closed primaries last year for next year, and so those dates have been set. But now the legislature has changed those dates so that they would be moved back a month. So qualifying would move from January to February. The closed primaries would move from April to May. And part of the idea is that they want to hear from the U.S. Supreme Court and see if there's something that they can consider doing before those folks start qualifying for the spring election. So some people were saying that they're only changing in a month. Well, I take issue with that, because if you're only changing in a month, why change it? It's not significant, and no one was making them do this. This is clearly a move to buy some time and take a shot at undoing something the very same governor and legislature just approved in 2024. And it's a part of a movement that's happening across the nation to change congressional districts so that they're more favorable to the Republicans to hold on to the U.S. House of Representatives.
And then a district was approved, and Cleo Fields was elected to that new district. That's a 6th congressional district. There was a challenge to it before the U.S. Supreme Court, who's had 2 hearings on it, most recently the second hearing. And so that's what we're waiting on. What is the Supreme Court, what are they going to say about this?
And there's no indication that the Supreme Court will issue a ruling by the end of the year. Traditionally, a number of the bigger cases are not decided until the spring or even summer. So that would be their norm, particularly with a bigger case. If they were to issue it before the end of the year, then it'd be how fast could they come back and agree on a new set of maps that then would allow the Secretary of State to put things in place for qualifying and for a later date.
Well, the state legislature and the state was really under the gun, really, to come up with this newly designed new congressional district, because lower courts had said that we needed to create a second minority-majority district.
Correct.
And that, of course, is now what is being challenged and has been heard in the U.S. Supreme Court. So I guess, it's kind of confusing, because on what criteria, how will they base the drawing of some sort of new district if we need to again?
Well, that's going to be the big issue from the U.S. Supreme Court. I haven't talked to anybody who is thoroughly versed in this who thinks that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to leave things as they are. There's going to be some change.
And this is a national
question-
litmus test, because this was the very, very conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal that upheld the new maps.
Right.
And now they're back in question. So if something but the Fifth Circuit stamp of approval is now in question, everything is in question.
Everything is in play, and we don't know where they might draw the line, so to speak, and that could mean some of anything.
Well, as far as the special session was concerned, they did push back qualifying and the actual election date by a month.
Yes.
As you said, just to maybe, if it so happens, to give the legislature more time to redraw.
And let's remember, before the end of the year means, okay, Halloween, Thanksgiving.
We're there now.
Early December, Christmas parties, Christmas. Are they really going to be in Baton Rouge on December 26th? I think not.
Well, we shall see where this all goes. All right, thanks a lot, Will. All right, Doug, let us wrap up with you, because what's happening with the Saints?
Well, we're getting our first look at the Saints' potential quarterback of the future. Look, the single most important thing to me this season is you have to know by the end of the season, are you in the quarterback market next year? Look, this season, I hope a lot of people didn't have unrealistic expectations. The Saints were going to be bad. It's year one. It's a reboot. You had an old roster. You're trying to get younger. There's no way to get from there to there without going through some difficult times. Difficult times right now. But the one thing you have to know by the end is, are you investing in a quarterback again next year? So now Tyler Shuck is the Saints starting quarterback. Kellen Moore said he's not going to look over his shoulder. He's his quarterback from now, in theory, for the rest of the season, as long as he doesn't get hurt or his performance isn't so bad that they expect bad. It would have to be so bad to get benched. Right. He's getting at least a 4 or a 6 game runway. My guess is it's for the rest of the season. And by the end of the year, you need to know, do we need a quarterback of the future, or might Tyler Shuck be that guy? And we begin getting that answer Sunday in Los Angeles. The Rams, by the way, have a spectacular pass rush. He's going to be mauled on Sunday, but that's not a bad first step, because then he won't face a pass rush that difficult in his last 8 games. So it gives him a chance.
Tough opening opponent for him.
So tough. The Rams are second in the NFL in sacks, and they don't blitz. They do it with just the guys up front. Third in the NFL in scoring defense. They're a terrific defense. Let's see what he can do. There's no reason not to just throw it all out there, take chances, see what happens.
Is there a future for Spencer Rattler? Is there?
I think Spencer Rattler has shown that he's a better quarterback than most people thought. I think his future is as a solid NFL backup. And as a 5th-round draft pick, that's a great pick. That's a solid pick as a 5th-round pick. He can come in and win you some games. I think he's the 23rd ranked quarterback in the NFL. If he was a starter, he'd be a below average starter. He could be a starter, meaning as a backup, he could help you. I think he's shown that he's probably not a starting quarterback in the NFL.
What about the Pelicans?
Well, the Pelicans have yet to win a game this season as we record this, and Willie Green is in trouble. They were 21-61 last year. This is year 5. If they start this season 0-6, come back to New Orleans Sunday night, it's possible Willie Green could lose his job as early as Monday. That's not uncommon in the NBA for coaches to get fired even that early in the season. The team's not losing close. The loss in Denver was by 34 points with Zion Williamson playing. And they looked listless and had no answers and did not look like they were playing particularly hard. I think the clock is on Willie Green right now, and it's probably a matter of time. Joe Dumars taken over the team, has gotten some young pieces in there, started building for the future. My guess is that build is not going to be with Willie Green.
Now, is one of the big issues Zion himself?
Yeah, well yes. At this point, although Zion played well on Friday against San Antonio, look, Zion holds a lot of cards because he's the most talented guy on the roster. Absolutely, at some point, Zion could be a trade chip. I think Willie Green's on the table first, and we'll see what happens with him. I have a feeling that's going to happen. Look, it's going to be a couple of years before this team's ready to win. We're finding that out quickly this season.
So would that be Zion's 3rd coach?
Yes.
Van Gundy.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, Zion has had a hard time staying on the floor. He's a superstar caliber player. I still think he has an MVP type season in him. I don't know if we're going to see it in New
But
Orleans.
he's your team leader.
Yeah.
Franchise cornerstone. Build. It was all about build around Zion.
Yeah.
Right?
No, right.
None of these other guys.
And to this point, he hasn't. Look, he came in this year clearly, just from an eyeball test, in better shape than he's ever been. So you see what looks like a stepped-up commitment. We have not seen it on the court yet. Now, again, we're very early in the season. I think Willie Green happens first, and then we'll see. But I think everything's on the table. If Willie Green goes, everything's on the table at the trade deadline.
All right, we shall see.
Oh, my.
And yes, you do help the mamas of the world understand about sports.
I try.
For those of us who really don't know that much about it. All right, other stories. E, over to you.
There's been a lot of high hopes last few years for the whole Riverfront Development District proposal with hotels and restaurants and everything. We learned in The Advocate Friday morning that friend Tony McAuley reported that's in trouble, that the key investor is backing out. Now, maybe there's still a lot of hard ball needs to be played behind the scenes, and we're at a point where we're mid-administration, so maybe it has to change. But for right now, the project seems like it's going in the wrong direction.
All right, over to you, Doug. Yeah.
Well, I would say between the Saints, Pelicans, and LSU, it's a lot. Look, I think Tyler Shuck, I do want to say this as the last point, I think Tyler Shuck has a chance to be a really good NFL quarterback. His athletic numbers, just his speed, size, all of that are excellent, better than people think. He didn't run much in college because he got hurt a bunch in college. I think his coaches are trying to protect him. I think he has a chance. He has got a shotgun for an arm. You'll see it when he plays. The ball jumps out of his hand like few players. I am super excited to see him play.
Well, we're wishing him all the luck on Sunday, that's for sure, and beyond. Will, over to you.
Well, unfortunately, Xavier University announced this week that close to 50 people are being laid off.
Oh.
That's a lot of people for even an LSU-sized campus all at once. For a campus the size of Xavier University, that's about 6%. But that affects some key areas where you can't help but feel the impact on a campus that size. This is happening because of changes in the Big Beautiful Bill or the Big Ugly Bill, whatever you want to call it, and expect to see more of this as the year goes on.
No, that's too bad. Okay, over to you.
Well, I can tell you that in addition to Helena Moreno, now Mayor-elect Helena Moreno, really kind of stepping forward and taking charge. Another election got decided, and that was the criminal sheriff. And we're going to obviously see Michelle Woodfork. And some things going on behind the scenes there already is that they are finding tremendous bloat at the manager and upper management level. You're going to see heads roll. You can't cut deputies. You're already down 40% on the frontline deputies. You're going to see almost a complete clean sweep of that office is what I'm hearing.
All righty. We'll be looking for that. Thanks a lot, guys, for being here. Great discussion. Thank you all for joining us. See you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
From a young boy, I've treasured WYES because it's where curiosity lives.
From Nova and Masterpiece to Nature and great performances, it's programming that matters.
With funding challenges, our support is now more meaningful than ever.
Please join us.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.